The Palace of Speed, ladies and gentlemen, here at Autodromo Nazionale Monza for the fifth race of Season 10 of the Spec-5 World Tour. We're here at the virtual Monza for tonight's race, the pride of Italian racing history. Monza is a true cathedral to speed, unmatched around the world for its sense of history and passion, fueled in part by its long history and also the fanaticism of the Italian fans, the Tifosi. With the steadily decaying remnants of the high-speed banked circuit providing a backdrop to the parkland trees, the atmosphere here is like no other. A mix of speed, melodrama, and more than a hint of melancholy. This track is absolutely insane. One of Formula One's best races takes place here every year, and fun fact, they're actually there this week, and we're here at the virtual one for a bit of Miata fun here tonight as we get qualifying underway here tonight. This race, Randall. Actually, before I head on to that, and I actually forgot to do this, my name is Alex Andersen. I am joined in the commentary booth by Randall McGrew with Adam Thompson in our virtual production truck. And Randall, I mean, it's just with the way this track is, you have so many straights, you have so many tight corners, so many different passing opportunities around this racetrack. I mean, we are set up for probably what is going to be one of the greatest races of the season.
That's right. In iRacing, Monza is a bit of a meme just because it provides a lot of really close action, lots of very heavy braking zones that can lead to incidents on track. But with these guys, I suspect we're just going to see a lot of clean, hard racing.
Yeah, and we have a couple of new drivers here tonight. One of them you're looking at right now, driving the number 32 Morton Salt Miata. This is Ashley Lyle. I know this driver very well. She's very talented as well. Mark McCormack as well in the pro class. He had a 2:15.2 in practice, so he was doing pretty well for himself inside the top 10. We have to see what he puts up for his first qualifying attempt in his career in this series as he heads through Ascari right now. And I mean, just even with an iconic track, there's also iconic names as well. Here's another new driver, a friend that I know very well, Ethan Stanley in the number 96 Quantum Threat Miata, doing very well for himself, was second in practice for the open class. And this track, I mean, you talk about iconic corner names for a track like this, and also we have locals here tonight. Eugenio Polici actually lives pretty much right next to this track, so pretty much his home race, and we're going to see how well he can do at his home track tonight.
Yeah, he's definitely going to have a home field advantage here at his home track. We'll see if he can put together a good qualifying time and maybe fight for the win.
I think he'll definitely be capable of it behind the wheel of that number 7 car. We know how fast this driver is, and the fast has top 5 pace. Hasn't really shown the results from it in the first 4 races of the season, but I think if there's any race where he can turn on the jets and start to get up there, this is going to be the one. You can see as he heads down this straight here, actually there it is, that little bridge that he crosses under. There used to be a high-speed oval section that was included with the original layout of this track, and you can actually still drive it on the iRacing simulator. I've done it before with friends. It's very fun. Unfortunately, it got closed down due to safety hazards, but the remnants of it still lies just decaying around the outside a little bit. You can see the turn 1 part of it in the background a little bit there, but we're going to go on board for a flying lap around here with Eugenio Polici into 5th gear, on the brakes early and down into 2nd through Parabolica. It's a corner with an early apex, and you bring it out wide all the way to the apron of the track. Bring it back down towards the middle and barrel down this front straight. And this is going to be a common fixture with these tracks where the straights just seem to go on forever and ever and ever, especially in these cars as he heads down the main straight past all the Italian fans cheering him on here. And just continuously going down this main straight. I mean, it just feels so long. There's the pit exit cone, and there's the braking point for turn 1 all the way down into 1st gear for the first chicane of this track. Eugenio Polici does a nice job there using all the available track surface, getting a good run through it. Now he's going to head through Curva Grande. I mean, this track probably has some of the most iconic names around. Everybody knows what track you're talking about when you mention places like Curva Grande, Ascari, Parabolica, Lesmos. It's just, this track really has it all. And as Eugenio Politi barrels towards the second chicane here, it's a bit different from the first one. It's a bit more straightforward, while the other one curves a little bit over both the curbs. And Eugenio Politi once again does a great job keeping it nice, smooth, and consistent into Lesmos 1 and 2 as Zach Burke sets the first lap time on the board there. And it looks like, Eugenio, he got on the curb a little bit there and got a bit loose. iRacing updated these Miatas in their past updates, so they are a bit harder to drive now. Eugenio eats the curb for the second part of Lesmos, gets a great run down this short chute as he heads down this long straightaway under the Fly Emirates banner there, through a little curve in the road, under the bridge for the oval section. He's barreling towards the braking zone of Ascari here. Quite a unique chicane. I don't think there's anyone else like it. You got to bring it right onto that inside curb, and then, he looks like he messed up the exit a little bit there. He manages to keep it together, though, and now he's going to bring it down this short chute to bring it towards Parabolica, bring it towards Sector 4 and complete his flying lap under another bridge and past some more Italian fans cheering him on to see what he can do. And into the braking zone for Parabolica. He comes down to third gear, actually, this time. It was second gear on his out lap. Brings it all the way to the outside. Now we have to see what he does when he crosses the line. He's doing a pretty good job on this lap. 2:11 at the moment as he heads toward the line. And he's going to get himself a... Let's see what iRacing or the overlays say. It looks like a 2:15.7. So a pretty good lap from him so far.
Yeah, and he's only got room to improve as he gets some tire temperature built up. It'll be a bit more compliant through some of these tricky chicanes. The update to this this car and its tire model has made this car have a lot of oversteer, probably much more closer to its real-life counterpart. I did some cider laps, and I actually managed to spin it coming out of turn 1 when I got on the throttle, and I've never really done that before. So the car is a bit more snappy than it used to be. Probably a lot more fun to drive. I was certainly having a blast with it. And you really got to set up those chicanes so that you sacrifice a little bit of entry to make sure you set up that exit to get a good run off of it. Because most of them are followed by a very long stretch of full throttle. So you really need to maximize your exit speed.
Here's Sean Ruiz as he heads across the line. P9 at the moment as Ronnie Coates goes P6. So Sean Ruiz, P10 now. Actually, no, still P9. Scott Keane just improved on his lap here. And currently, Otis Adams running away from the field there with a 2:15, a 1:18. Mitchell Peak, though, just under 2/10 behind with a 2:15.3. He's going to start his third flying lap around this circuit. It's a 2-minute, 15-second lap. That's what these guys are going for. Ooh, Mitchell, he got on the gravel a little bit there on exit. That's going to hurt him a little bit. And these guys, they just 2 minutes and 15 seconds where they have to be on it around this track. And the hot track temp could really prove to be a pretty difficult challenge for some of these guys, especially some of the newcomers, as we know there are quite a few of them in this race.
Well, luckily they weren't running a month prior to this, or the track temperature would have been absolutely blistering. We're seeing a lot of pace out of some of these drivers now, but once we get into the race, the game is completely different. It's going to be all about maintaining the slipstream, trying not to fight too hard for positions so that you don't lose contact with the cars ahead of you, and trying to save some fuel. We might see this one decided on who has the shortest pit stop.
And I know we talk about gaps between cars quite a bit here, but there's a pretty big one here. So it looks like Charles Vaccaro completing his first flying lap, but there's a pretty big gap here. If you take a look at the spaces between 10th and 14th, Ethan Stanley hangs on to the top 10 spot, currently leading the open class by 3 spots. And with the drafting nature of this track, it might not seem like much, but I mean, you've heard of DRS trains in Formula One, I bet. Welcome to draft trains, which we've mentioned before quite a bit. But if these guys just get stuck in draft trains, I mean, Stanley, Hierro might not have a shot to catch him, or Jerry might not even have a shot if these guys just get stuck in a draft train and Stanley just ends up chilling in line.
It's going to be very interesting to see how things play out. As you mentioned, the front straightaway is forever long for these cars, so I expect that we're going to see a couple people break out of the draft, try to work together, probably see a second line form, especially early in the race. Could see a lot of door-to-door contact, door-to-door racing, multiple columns or multiple rows deep each lap through the first 10 laps.
Lee Martin goes P12. There's Jerry DiPiero. Looks like he improved his spot there to get himself only 2 cars away from Stanley here, as it looks like nobody really close to completing another flying lap here. So you see McCormack heading towards Curva Grande. It's his first race, and he has another newcomer right behind him at the moment. And here's David Staub, currently running P15. This is now we go back to Rui Coimbra, who really, I'm not sure if the update caught him off guard or maybe, but he just doesn't seem like he would be this far down typically, currently sitting P13.
Well, as always we see with Rui Coimbra, he's maybe not the best qualifier, but he always puts it together come race time. So I won't be surprised if we see him at the sharp end of the field once the checkered flag flies.
And here's Ethan Stanley. Looks like he's going to try and get another flying lap done here, as Ray Lombardi took the open class lead away from him by about a 10.5 there with a 2:15.6. So we're going to have to see what Stanley does in response, as he's going to barrel down this front straightaway, as it looks like he's one of the only few people that are still on track. There still is quite a few of them. Otis Adams Jr. looks like he's going to try and set another one. Here's Gareth Brocklesby, currently sitting P20. He's going to try and set another flying lap here. Charles Vaccaro also out on track. Tom Rath is out there as well. Also, Greg Brockway and Sean Ruiz currently trying to set more lap time. So everybody just with under 4 minutes remaining in qualifying are trying to set some late game fast lap times. And Ray Lombardi here, I mean, he's probably still on his first couple of laps, depending on how late he set that one. So, I mean, he could be in a pretty good spot to maintain pole for the open class. But speaking of pole, let's take a look at how much Otis Adams is leading this field by right now. 2.5 tenths. That is a massive, massive gap for this track. Even if the draft is going to close it right up, that's still time these guys are going to be losing. And oh, I think I might have just mini commentators cursed Otis Adams Jr. there as he headed through the second chicane. Got a little bit loose there. And Paulo Coimbra actually just set the fastest sector 2. It's not going to get him very far up the field, but fastest sector 2 from that 65 car. So it obviously has some speed. He just needs to put himself in a good spot. There's Ashley Lyle coming to a stop after completing her flying laps there in P25. But I can't get over the fact that Rui Coimbra is currently sitting. Oh, never mind. I stand corrected. There he goes up to P6. And here's Ethan Stanley. He's gone faster than he has in his first 2 sectors. Here's Otis Adams Jr. He went yellow in his first 3 sectors. But here's Stanley heading down the back straightaway towards Parabolica. We'll have to see what he does when he crosses this sector line and if he improves or not. Yes, he did improve. So Stanley all around looking like an improvement of a lap time through Parabolica. Just needs to keep it clean. He's going to head around the final turn, full throttle from here to the finish line. We have to see what he does to see if he can take back the open class provisional pole. Heads towards the line, ducks a little bit down below the white line. It looks like he is going to improve by 2 spots as well with a 2:15.4. So a great result from him.
Almost a tenth faster than Lombardi, so he definitely found something on that final lap. And you have to wonder maybe towards the front of the field if we have some gamesmanship going on with the qualifying. Maybe not showing all their speed, trying to back out of it a little bit. First place is almost a sitting duck in a race like this. So some of them maybe backing out of the line to maybe pad their spots a little bit. Starting 5th might be better than starting 1st.
Yeah, and Rui Coimbra might be proving that theory right today, as actually went faster in his second sector on this lap, so he's doing pretty good for himself across the line for the 3rd sector. Didn't improve there. So Rui Coimbra currently heading through Ascari, as it looks like this is going to be his final attempt. Very loose there through the center point of Ascari. That's where you can tell where the update has affected these cars. Very loose through some of the tighter corners at lower speeds and at higher speeds as well when you just try and throw them in there or throw them into the corner. So we'll have to see what Rui Coimbra does. A bit of an improvement there for sector 4, though, into the 5th sector through Parabolica for the last time. This will be the last flying lap that he can complete out of the final corner. Oh, he actually comes to a stop.
Yeah, he definitely would have had that lap canceled. He went 4 wheels over the white line there at the exit of Parabolica. The stewards would have canceled that lap and for violation of track limits.
think you might be right about that. As here's Michael Coates here, currently sitting P14. There's David Staub sitting in 18th right now. And it looks like, and that's a lot of track limits right there. As he went just a little bit of lawn mowing towards the end of qualifying. Got to make sure the grass is low. That way, anybody that might go off track doesn't get their front end destroyed. But that is going to do it for qualifying. And it looks like we're going to be able to take you through your starting grid for tonight. Otis Adams Jr. by 2.5 tenths of a second is going to take pole position from Mitchell Peak there with a 2:15.059. Mitchell Peak sits there in second. Ronnie Coates, great result in qualifying, only 200ths behind Mitchell there in P3. Then it's Scott Keen in P4. The home field advantage driver, Eugenio Polici, literally lives right next to this track in real life. So I bet the virtual Italian fans are going to be cheering that driver on. Rui Coimbra there in P6. Jedediah Babinek in P7, Zach Burke in P8, Joshua Soto in P9, Ethan Stanley in his first start here tonight in the number 96 Quantum Threat Miata, starting back there inside the top 10 in the open class. Sean Ruiz there in 11th, Mark McCormack in 12th, then Ray Lombardi in P13, Michael Coates in P14, Lee Martin in P15, Tom Rath in P16, Jerry DiPiero in P17, David Staub in P18, Brian Zabelski in P19, Charles Vaccaro in P20, Gareth Brocklesby in P21, Kenneth Staub in P22, Sean Hayes in P23, Andrew Cossack in P24. Then to round out the field, it's Ashley Lyle there in P25, Josh Olson in P26, Paulo Coimbra P27, Greg Mack P28, Tom Athan in P29, Bruce Silva in P30, Greg Brockway P31, John Casey in P32, and then Paul Mikulicek, don't think he's going to start the race there in P33. So, I mean, with just the way this field is set out, we have so many different things that can happen. I mean, and so many unknowns going into this race. I mean, we have Monza. The track itself got an update. The Miatas, they got an update. They're a lot more harder to drive, a lot looser, which means these guys can be a bit more aggressive if they know what they're doing. And we have newcomers, Ashley Lyle, Ethan Stanley, Matthew McCormack, and just everybody. There's a lot of unknowns going into this race. And it's Mark McCormack, sorry. And just a lot of unknowns going into this race. And just, we have a lot on our hands as the cars start to roll off the grid.
There's no doubt this race is going to be a battle, whether you're in the front, whether you're in the middle or the back. And just like in battle, you're going to have a plan going into it. But once that green flag flies, that plan's probably going to be thrown out the window. You're going to have to make a move early, set up for T1, take what the race gives you, and hope for the best. It's going to be a real gaggle coming into this first chicane.
Yeah, and honestly, the first chicane is probably where we're going to see the most incidents this race on the opening lap of this race, with a field of 32 cars that are going to be barreling down in there. Formula One can do it with 20, but especially with how small these cars are and the guts that these drivers have to try and make first lap moves, it's definitely going to be pretty hectic here. But here they come to round Parabolica. Otis Adams Jr. on pole, Mitchell Peak to his outside, Ronnie Coates and Scott Keen behind them, as the iRacing safety car is going to dive into the safety of the pit lane in just a few seconds here. There it goes, and now it's all up to the flagman as anticipation looms over the Autodromo Nazionale Monza, and the green flag is out, and we're oh wait, no, I was a little bit early on that one. And it looks like actually the start-finish line was a bit early there, but here we go. We're racing from Monza. It's a pretty good start. Otis Adams Jr. Mitchell Peak has a bit of a run on the outside there. Pushes from both cars behind him. You can see everybody fanning out. Jedediah Babinek onto the grass there, going 3 wide for a move already. Everybody, that's a big crash back there that I just barely caught. And that's a lot of cars around. One hard into the inside wall, 3 wide into the first corner. It looks like they're sorting themselves out. That was a big, big hit. I know Tom Athan was in it. Not sure who else was involved. I think it might have been Greg Brockway. But that's a very big first lap incident. Here's a replay of it. So we see Tom Athan, just barely makes contact with Greg Brockway here. So everybody prepares to break into turn 1 for the first time, into the inside wall. And I think Tom actually comes back across the track. somehow doesn't make contact with anybody. Oh, there goes Greg Brockway. Yeah, Greg shoots Tom back across the track, makes contact with Andrew Kosick, who sends him into the inside wall. Greg Brockway hard into the inside retaining wall as well. And it looks like that might be the end for both of those drivers' nights. So already chaos in the opening few minutes of this race. And actually Andrew Kosick off track there as well. So chaos early on in this race.
Yeah, this is exactly what we expected. You're trying to fit a lot of cars into a small space. Cars further back in the field are going faster than the cars in front of them. There's going to be a big compression, and sometimes things happen quick. Sometimes you think you're clear to one side and you're not as clear as you thought. Unfortunate circumstances for Brockway and for Kosick, who was collected during that, and for Athon.
And it looks like we have a driver off track. This is Jerry DiPiero. It looks like he got really disconnected from the field. Quite a lot of front end damage there on that car. It looks like he just tapped the edge of Lesmos, just sends him into the grass. Like we were mentioning earlier, these cars are a lot harder to drive, a lot easier to make minor mistakes like that. And as they come to complete the first lap of this race, there's actually people are tumbling down the order back there. I'm not sure what's happening.
It looks like Ray Lombardi.
Yeah, I don't know what happened. Stanley fell back to P21 there. Sean Hayes currently leads the open class, but Jedediah Babinek going for a bonsai move here into turn 1 after Mitchell Peak leads the first lap. Onto the brakes they go into turn number 1. It looks like Jedediah Babinek, if he can make turn 1, just barely, is going to take the lead away for the first time tonight. Now I want to see if we can get a replay on what happened to the open drivers back there, because everybody just fell back for... I don't know why. Everybody just started falling back from each other.
And we see Babinek move up to the lead. He started in P7. So aggressive early. Oh, a pinch move. 3 cars trying to fit into space where only 2 could fit. And heartbreak for a few cars. Coming into Parabolica.
And that was Stanley. I believe Sean Ruiz was in that as well. And Ray Lombardi. So the 2 favorites in the open class are out, or not really out though. Stanley was able to maintain his position, but Ray Lombardi fell way back with what I believe was a broken left front suspension. So Stanley surely still in this race, as Ashley Lyle currently leads the open class. First time that she's ever raced in this series, and currently she's leading this race there in that number 32 car, but she can't snooze on Paulo Coimbra, who currently is pretty close behind her, but Paulo is racing another car back there, and actually Stanley looking for a move almost. That is Paul Mikolajczyk there, currently sitting in P18. Ethan Stanley is going to push Paulo Coimbra around him, and now these 2 open class drivers are going to have to set their sights on the open class leader right in front of them in that number 32 car. Actually, Stanley still side by side with Paul Mikolajczyk, couldn't get around in there.
Ashley's going to be very happy with what she's seen in her mirror. She's maintained contact with the cars ahead of her, is going to have a nice slipstream, and there's a big gap back behind her. It's 2.5 seconds now. That might be too big to surmount without some help. They really need to sort themselves out, work together. Otherwise, they're going to lose contact with Ashley and the front half of the field.
I don't know. You can't snooze on the driver of that 65 car. We know how fast and aggressive he is, and he can really... when the chips are all down, he can really wring all the potential out of that Miata. So we need to just keep an eye on that battle so far. But speaking of battles, Otis Adams has retaken the lead as Jedediah Babinek is currently nowhere to be found. I'm not sure where he's at. If I'm taking a look at the running order.
He's in P5 right now.
P5 back there. So already in just 1 lap, he was leading the race going into the first chicane a lap ago. Now he's sitting there in P5, and this is Paul Mikolajczyk here going into Parabolica. Not sure what happened to him. He throws it into the corner there, goes a little bit wide, and it looks like that's all it was. He's able to continue all right, and it looks like those open drivers, they were still struggling to get around him to try and start making moves back towards Paulo Coimbra and Ashley Lyle.
I think... with Babinek, I think on the last lap, he managed to get a slowdown on one of the chicanes. We've seen him drop back to about 7th and then move his way back up to 5th throughout that lap. But I believe he got a slowdown and had to serve that mid-lap.
And yeah, so it looks like you were right about that. So Stanley was able to get around Paul Mikulajczyk that time, and now he's right on the back bumper of Paulo Coimbra. But these guys are really losing time from Ashley Lyle. Looks like, for whatever reason, Paulo Coimbra just really slow in that number 65 car. I'm not sure why. It could be because that pack in front of these guys, they all had the draft, and they're able to go faster in that big pack. So they're really, I'm not sure what Stanley and Coimbra and all those guys are going to have to try and do to try and catch back up to the open class leader right now, who actually currently is making a move on Kenneth Staub for P15 here. She's going to manage to do that before they get to Parabolica, but those guys need to work together if they want to get back up there.
It was 2.5 seconds a lap ago. It's up to 5 seconds now to Ken Staub and increasing. So they really need to sort themselves out. Maybe play some leapfrog down the straightaways to try to make up some time, do some bump drafting, fight each other less, and just try to close that gap back up.
Yeah, and there's still, we haven't really talked about it much, but there's just a revolving door of leaders. Last lap, it was Otis Adams. This lap, it's Ronnie Coates as they head to the first chicane this time. Mitchell Peak currently follows him up there in second, and it's just a long line of pro-class cars that are all just playing catch-up, I guess. Ashley Lyle's still just trying to make a lot of moves on the cars in front of her, a lot of speed out of that number 32 car. Going to try and go to the outside of Brian Zabelski through Curva Grande. She's got the run there, trying to get a bit of side draft as they head towards the second chicane. That's going to be a risky move, smart decision to back out of it. And Ashley Lyle's going to maintain P15, but she still is pulling away a lot from the guys behind her.
She's being very patiently aggressive, taking opportunities as they come to her. You don't want to fight too hard like these guys up front are doing. It could really cost you some time. You see they sort themselves out very quickly up front. You see somebody step out to take a move. They almost let it happen and fall back in line behind and try to keep it in a straight line as much as possible to keep that draft going. You almost don't want to be in front, so you invite a pass to happen sometimes. But you really want to save fuel as much as you can.
Well, I mean, I think of these guys, I mean...
Oh
no! That's Rui... Oh, no, it's Otis Adams Jr. and Jedediah Babinek threw a Scary there. Jedediah Babinek goes around, is parked right there. That's a bad space to be stopped. He ends up getting it back going. And that is... I'm not sure what happened there. That's going to really hurt Otis Adams Jr., who currently sits P12 after that. And it looks like we're going to be getting a replay of it. Here it is. This is through Lesmos 2. Looks like Otis Adams Jr. ended up falling back behind Jedediah Babinek as they headed down this straightaway. Mitchell Peak and Ronnie Coates leading the field at that moment. This is the rear bumper cam, the gearbox camera of Jedediah Babinek. You can see the 23 car there of Mark McCormack. And then there's Otis Adams Jr. behind him. And it looks like Otis had a draft run here, and it looks like I honestly, I'm not sure what happened there, because it looked like Jedediah, he hit the brakes early, but also Otis just seemed to really just wiggle under braking, or excuse me, no, Jedediah was wiggling under braking, and Otis just really didn't hit I think Jedediah must have made contact with Ronnie Coates, couldn't get the car woed back up before the corner, and Otis just was caught in the crossfire there, but that's going to really affect the race of both of those cars, and Ashley Lyle, I don't know what happened in the time where we were looking at the replay of that, but last I checked, she was P15. Now she's fighting for a top 10 spot. I don't know what just happened, but she is making moves in that Morton Salt car.
So that incident before the previous lap really shook up the top pack and led to that gaggle that you just saw going into a the second chicane. The slower cars rejoining and everybody checking up really broke up the front pack into two packs, and now everybody's trying to sort themselves out, trying to make best of the situation as much as they can, and we're seeing them get back in line now, but it was a very hectic lap.
And here's Sean Ruiz in the number 21 car. That car jostling around as he, I think he might have gone to the Shadow Realm there. He might have no, there he is again. So we're looking at a replay of him down the front straight. Maybe just a bit of a ghost thing on Adam's side. And here's Ethan Stanley heading through Ascari. He has quite a big gap to any cars in front of him. I mean, he has cars behind him that could, if they work together, they could probably get up there. But currently, this third group, I want to say, is very disorganized.
Yeah, they're quickly getting to the point of the race where they're not going to have really any hope of getting back into contact with the lead pack. So they might just start fighting for the positions that they can get. Though they really need to sort it out. It's very hard on a track like this in these cars where you have such long straightaways to exercise patience. And as you can see, they keep falling further and further off the pace.
Mark McCormack in his first start up 11 spots to lead the field on lap 6 into the first chicane. Joshua Soto has worked his way up to P3. And really the field is just, it's all just been a revolving door of different cars just leading this race. One guy leads, next lap he's 5 spots back at the end of the first pack. So this, just the leading battle has just been all over the place. Everybody inside the top 7, I believe, has led this race at one point. And currently Joshua Soto, I mean, he's done a really good job for himself, up 6 spots. Tom Rath up 10 since the race started. But Mark McCormack leading the field right now through Lesmos, up 11 spots there in that number 23 car.
We look back, we have a 5-car breakaway, but back in 6th and 7th, Tom Rath and Eugenio Pulici. If they work together, they may be able to close that gap some. If they fight, they're going to fall victim to the group behind them. What they really need to do is to bump draft, hope that the leaders start fighting some more, and try to save as much fuel as they can, maybe playing leapfrog, letting each other save a little bit of gas each lap, and try to catch back up on the pit stop.
And that's another thing that some of these newcomers, like Ashley Lyle, Ethan Stanley, Mark McCormack, are going to have to worry about, that the experienced drivers might already know what they're doing about. And that is the pit stops. And we know that in every race, these guys do have to make at least one required pit stop. This race, I believe it's going to be around 2.8 gallons to get them to the end when they pit. So the thing is, do you want to take tires? I think if anybody, or the sides of tires that they're going to take, I think it's going to be left sides, judging off the corners where the left sides are at the most vulnerable. Curva Grande, Parabolica, Lesmos, all of that. So I think left side tires are going to be the tires to take here for these drivers. And fuel, I mean, we've seen some absurd fuel strategies in the past that these guys have tried to pull off. And speaking of absurd things, look at this 3-car tandem bump draft as these guys head down into the first chicane. I think that's the first time this race where the same person has gone into the first chicane in the lead 2 laps in a row here. I think Mark McCormack is the first one to do it from the United States.
Yeah, it's very unusual to see him in the lead this long. I think Mitchell Peak may be playing him for a newbie a bit here, saying, go ahead, have the lead, clear the air for me. I will save fuel happily behind you. We have a 5-car breakaway now. They've been very calm ever since that incident happened. So I think they're just biding their time now and letting the new guy cut his teeth a little bit.
And it looks like we have a bit of a reported incident from John Casey. This is him heading down the front straightaway there in that 133 car. Racing with the 50 car of Andrew Kosick, I believe that is, on the brakes into turn number 1. And it looks like overshot it just a little bit. Tries to bring it back into the racing line. Does a pretty good job of not getting anyone else involved. Just a bit of a misfire into the first chicane. And that's a very easy thing to do at this track, as it looks like we have a bit of a main breakaway for these guys. And that looks like between the top 5 cars, Scott Keane, the last person involved. Then the next car is Eugenio Pulici, the hometown driver, 4 seconds back. So these Italian fans, they're really trying to cheer him on to try and get him back into contention for the win here.
Do you see Eugenio and Tom doing what I suggested, playing a little bit of leapfrog, trying to close that gap up, or trying to not let it open up any further? Hopefully they can both save a little bit of fuel and catch back up with the pit stop. But it looks like they're kind of stranded now. They have maintain the gap back to the pack behind them, so they're a bit on an island. They can work together and not fight too much. They may have a good chance to be back in contact.
And it looks like back to the open class for a bit, Ethan Stanley has pulled away from some of the cars behind him, as I believe he's heading through Parabolica right now. So he's distanced himself from any other cars, but the next car in front of him is Kenneth Staub 5 seconds ahead of him. So he has some work to do if he wants to try and catch back up to Ashley Lyle to re-challenge for the lead, which I think he definitely has the speed to do it, but he just has no drafting help. They're running 217s all by his lonesome there with no draft. So I think the best spot that he could try and look to catch up is probably going to be the pit stops, but a bit of contact there, yeah, between Otis Adams Jr. and Ashley Lyle. So, I mean, if Stanley doesn't catch up, I mean, if Ashley wrecks, that's another thing. And we saw something close to it right there. That was out of the first chicane. I do believe it looked like they just met in the middle there. No harm, no foul, nobody spins, but Ashley lost a bit of her spots there and falls back to P14 as a result.
She lost a few spots, but she didn't lose much track position. She's still in contact with that pack. They still have plenty of time to sort it back out. She has a chance to save some fuel. Track position is really king around here. So as long as she maintains contact with this group, she should be okay.
Yeah, and she's doing a really good job with that and was racing them as well, even though she's going up against a more experienced pro-class drivers. And I was talking to her before the race, and she said that, quite frankly, she sucks at this track. So doing a great job here tonight at a track that I'm pretty sure she is not very confident at in that number 32 car. So a great job from her tonight. And it looks like the battle for the lead has calmed down quite a little bit, as these guys just remain dormant here. Actually, it's just as I say that, I think Joshua Soto and Ronnie Coates might be side by side there. Actually, no, Scott Keane going for a move on Soto here through Parabolica. Mitchell Peak might have thought about one, decides better of it through this final corner. Scott Keane is going to take away P4, but they lost quite a bit of time from the rest of the cars in front of them as a result, as Mitchell Peak and Mark McCormack are doing a great job just gapping these guys. But that was a car entering pit lane. That was Joshua Soto in the number 145 and the number 135 car that just entered the pit lane. So the pit window is now officially open here on lap 9 of this race. So minute 18, it looks like he's the only one to pit this lap. But now these guys are going to have to start worrying about when to pit.
It was a very odd call to pit from the last position in that group. You almost want to wait as long as possible if you're in the back of a group, so that you can get a little bit of more track position when the cars ahead of you pit, or to pit with other people. Now he's going to be on an island. Hopefully he's not on an island too long, or he's really going to lose a lot of time without having any draft partner.
And I think if you're someone like Eugenio Polici or Ethan Stanley trying to catch up to the class leader, I think the best shot for these guys to do that is pit road, where if they can just stay out for a little bit longer than the rest of the field, they'll have to take less fuel. They can maybe spend less time on pit road and make up some time on the other cars in front of them, which could really help them later on in this race.
Also, we see the gap is closing to that pack behind them. Rui Coimbra is now only 1.9 seconds off. It was about 3 seconds a few laps ago. So they're closing down. They could have some battles on their hands. They may pit very soon to try to break that draft. Yeah,
and another thing is that the pit window is from lap 7 to 13. So the race distance is going to be around 20 laps in total. And these guys can pit from here up until around lap 13. So I reckon a majority of drivers are going to pit this lap or either the next, but they're going to want to pit with other drivers in their groups to just try and maintain draft speed when they come out of the pits rather. And here comes Mitchell Peak through Parabolica. Looks like he took that top spot away from Mark McCormack. He's a little low off Parabolica. I'm not sure if this means anything. And it doesn't so far. The rest of the top four have yet to dive into the pit lane. So everybody stays out for another lap. But more cars have also come in. Tom Rath and Eugenio Polici are into the pits there. in the number 41 and number 7 cars. We'll have to see where they come out, but Mark McCormack was pushing Mitchell Peak down that front straightaway there, so I don't think these guys behind him, unless they really try and work together, I'm not sure if they'll have a shot at catching up.
You've seen last lap, Mitchell Peak was pushing McCormack. This lap, it was McCormack doing the pushing. They're working together, trying to gap the cars behind them as much as possible, hopefully trying to shake Soto off, and they'll have a four-way fight for the lead. So Soto's really in danger here of losing contact with the lead pack, may find himself back with Rath and Pulici, unless Rath and Pulici have managed to close that gap back up.
Oh, but we know the way Joshua Soto is. That man, you could put his car onto a completely different track, tell him to run 3 laps, and then have to come back to the race he was already in, and he'll still find a way to be there at the end in that number 135 car. The last thing you want to do in a race is count out Joshua Soto. We've seen some of the most absurd strategies from this guy, and he still ends up front challenging for the win late in the race. So I honestly think I'm going with it's just another play from him, and I expect to see that 135 car back up front towards the end of this race, but we're around 25 seconds away from the halfway point of this race, and you gotta wonder, if you're Ashley Lyle, who you have a massive gap over the car behind you, what do you do for pit stops? Because you don't want to lose all your time there, but it's not easy to think of a way to make up time on pit road for her, especially when you have Ethan Stanley right here, who probably already has a set strategy in play to try and make up time.
Well, we see right now the gap ahead of her is about 1.5 seconds. She's right at the edge of slipstream range. Easy for me to say. So if the car ahead of her pits, she may go in, especially if it's Otis Adams Jr. If he pits, I would definitely be following him in. Otherwise, if you're not closing the gap up, that would be another time to pit. As we see, she jumps in now with 3 cars ahead of her. So we're going to have a big group coming out of pit lane, and the second group could be reforming now.
We'll have to see what the second group does this time, as it looks like Stanley is in the pit lane as well. So a big group of cars, a lot of pro and open class drivers, everybody throwing on left side tires. And here come the other drivers in the pit lane. You can see this is Ethan Stanley there. There was Bruce Silva in the background as well. Greg Mack is back there as well. There's David Staub taking right sides as well, actually. There's the 2 car. I'm not sure who is actually in the 2 car that was right there. There's Ashley already out of her pit stall. And coming down pit road, is Stanley still stopped in his? I think he is there. Ashley's going to end up getting in front of him as she exits pit road. Stanley's still stationary in his stall, so these guys, they just have it looks like Stanley just didn't get the right strategy here. He's still sitting in his box there in that number 96 car.
Looks like Ashley Lyle has a pretty big gap ahead of her. Don't know if she took some excess fuel, didn't attack the pit lane entry enough, took all 4 tires possibly. I think we only saw her take left side tires, so it's hard to say what happened during that stop. Maybe overfueled a bit. We could see the gap in front of her is pretty big now. She's a bit on an island, so she's probably going to be stuck here in the position that she's going to end up in after the pit cycle completes.
Yeah, and the biggest loser from that was Ethan Stanley, who I think, he's still on track after that, but he lost a lot of time that pit cycle. I think maybe just severely overfueled the car, ended up sitting there for a lot longer than he needed to, and ends up falling back all the way to P29 there. So he has a bit of an uphill battle for the rest of this race in front of him, but these top 4 cars have yet to enter the pit lane. Here they come this time. Ooh, Mark McCormack swerves out last second there and decides to stay out another lap without these guys. But Mitchell Peak, Scott Keane, and Ronnie Coates all come into the pit lane. What do you think is the strategy play there?
That's a bold strategy. We'll see how it plays out for him. He's on his own for a lap. He's not going to have the benefit of draft. This is kind of like leading for a lap, so if he thinks he can set off a quali pace lap, this might be a good strategy, but I suspect that he's going to be at the tail end of that pack, maybe lost contact with them after he pits.
And Brian Zabelski here, who looks like Ashley Lyle right behind him. And this driver, he was fighting with Ashley Lyle. Those two drivers were going at it for quite a few laps there before the pit stalls. And you can see the time loss that Ashley took when she went into the pit lane. And that's exactly what I was talking about earlier. When you have all these drivers that are experienced in this series, they know what they're doing on pit road. And then you have newcomers, Stanley, Lyle, and they come onto pit road and they're not quite sure what to do, and they end up losing time to the cars in front of them as a result. Stanley obviously got the worst of it there back in P28. Ashley Lyle, she didn't hurt herself too much with it, but still lost quite a bit of time and might not end up with the other open class competitors or even behind them when they come into the pits.
You see, she was about 4 seconds slower than everybody else that was around her during that pit stop, so that explains why she's no longer in contact. I believe she probably overfilled her fuel tank. It's very difficult when you're in these cars to play crew chief and driver at the same time. It's very easy to get the pit strategy wrong, overfuel, and it's just one of those things you have to learn from experience. I bet next week, whenever we come back, that she will probably nail that pit stop.
And Mark McCormack here, he's gonna have to come into the pits this lap, I would assume. Yeah, there he goes into the pit lane. So now we have to see what's gonna happen with Mitchell Peak, Joshua Soto, and Ronnie Coates, who actually, Mitchell did a really good job on pit road there, pulled out quite a big gap to Joshua Soto behind him. So Mark McCormack, we'll have to see what he can do on pit road. It looks like Mitchell Peak currently looks like is currently heading through Parabolica. It's a great camera angle. You'll be able to see where Mitchell Peak comes around that final corner, and it looks like you can see Mark McCormack there still stationary in his box. There's Mitchell Peak dodges the pit lane as everybody else comes in, and it looks like I think he might have gotten Mark McCormack too. There he is. Currently just got out of the limiter line, and he's gonna miss Mitchell Peak by quite a bit there. Now it's an uphill battle for the rest of these guys to see if they can catch back up to him.
We see Mitchell Peak's got a huge gap back to Soto and Coates as McCormack rejoins behind Coates. These three have to work together now to catch to catch Mitchell Peak. And Scott Keen's got a hustle here to be in contact with these top four, so he maybe can have a shot at the end. But the second, third, and fourth really need to get it together and need to work together to catch Mitchell.
And Lee Martin is going to have probably the longest stint of the field. I believe he's the last driver to head into the pit lane here, staying out one extra lap. Could be going for a bonus point if they do those bonus points. I'm not quite sure there, driving that 149 car. But Ashley Lyle looks like she took the lead of the open class back after the pit cycle, so obviously didn't affect her that much. Currently second in the open class is Jerry DiPiero there in P18 overall. He has the 2 car of Greg Mack directly in front of him, currently pushing him towards the second chicane. So these guys, they can really just relax back here. I mean, I don't think they're close enough to really pose a threat to Ashley in front of them. So these guys, they can just relax with each other, just sit through the final 15 minutes of this race and collect their positions just normally. But I mean, even with how aggressive these guys have been, you talk about aggressive, Jerry DiPiero almost just threw it all away through Lesmos there on exit. I mean, I don't know if anybody towards the end of this race is going to be relaxed. And actually, Soto managed to catch Mitchell Peak. Ronnie Coates is next in line as Soto has retaken the lead. Ronnie Coates, Mark McCormack, and Scott Keen have caught up as well. So once again, it has become a 5-car battle for the lead with just 15 minutes left in this race.
It wouldn't surprise me to see that maybe Mitchell Peak made a mistake in Ascari and that allowed Soto to catch back up, or possibly the Lesmos or the second chicane. So I have a feeling we're going to be hearing from the production booth, yes. So it looks like Soto's already caught him at this point. So you were right. Don't sleep on Josh Soto. Very fast driver. Puts the pressure onto Mitchell Peak, and we're going to see if we see a mistake here. It looks like they just went wide. So I guess just raw pace. You were right. Josh Soto, don't sleep on him. He's going to be there at the end.
Yeah, and he is definitely very well in contention for the win at this place, but so is everybody else in the top 5. There you see the move that he pulled down this short chute, heading towards Ascari. It looked like Peak might have lifted a little bit there just to let him through. Now, oh no! Oh, that's a massive hit for Mitchell Peak through this. I'm not sure that's through the second chicane, under the bridge for it. That was a massive hit to the inside wall for that 56 car. It looked like he made side-by-side contact with Mark McCormack there. This is through Curva Grande. You think the draft might have had anything to do with this? That was netcode. Massive netcode had about half a foot gap between each other, and netcode sends Mitchell Peak careening into the inside wall. Mark McCormack felt the effects from it as well, probably has a broken right front tire, and that is just so unfortunate for two of the fastest drivers we've had all day. That just completely sucks. And another thing that it's done is it has created a quite large gap between first and second, Ronnie Coates and Joshua Soto.
Josh has got reinforcements in the form of Scott Keen, though. They can definitely work together and close this gap up. But don't look now, lurking in the background, Eugenio Polici and Tom Rath. They can definitely smell blood in the water. And if there's any fighting, they may have a chance to close this gap and have a chance right at the very end of the race.
Yeah, and we saw the gap that Soto closed to Mitchell Peak there. There's no doubt in my mind that he could do it to Ronnie Coates here, especially if he gets some help from the 271 car behind him down this front straight, which just seems to go on forever in these cars. Like we mentioned, you can see the gap closing now, utilizing the draft from the tandem between those two cars. The gap under 1 second and a tenth. I didn't know what to say there. the gap 1.1 seconds now, 1.0 through the first chicane, as Joshua Soto continuing to close that gap.
Because they continue to work together, they're definitely going to have a shot at Ronnie Coates at the end of the race. And we got to wonder if Tom Rath and that was not Eugenio Polici with Tom Rath. That is Coimbra, who looks to be serving a slowdown right now. If they can work together and try to close the gap back up to get back to that podium fight.
Yeah, and it looks like Soto has gotten within draft range as those guys head towards Lesmos. Here's Rui Coimbra. He's won all 4 races this season, but currently sitting just barely inside the top 5. So not his best race so far in the season, but still doing a pretty good job for himself there in that number 78 machine. And it looks like he's just hanging on to the back bumper of Tom Rath here, and this could shake up the points quite a bit. We could see a new points leader, as I believe the next car in line, not sure who it is, but they're only 5 points behind him here. So it looks like actually Joshua Soto fell out of draft range of Ronnie Coates there. Not sure where they are on track right now. I believe they're in the short chute between Ascari and Parabolica. But Scott Keen doing a great job pushing Soto through these straights. Here they are, heading towards Parabolica now, and it looks like that gap is going to get under a second once again. As they head towards Parabolica, it'll get even lower if Soto can get a good run through Parabolica here. Onto the brakes they go, and down into second gear, really just getting it as far over the curb as they can. And now, down the front straightaway, this is where Soto can really do a lot to try and close that gap. It's already coming down. It's going to be under 0.9 of a second. And that gap just rapidly closing. Josh's draft from Ronnie Coates and help from Scott Keen behind him. So this is definitely going to be a fight to the end, as Joshua Soto well within draft range and is now going to be able to challenge for the lead, I would assume, by the end of this lap. As these guys continue to race here, let's take a look at our one and only sponsor read here for tonight, if I can find it real quick. There it is. TPC Motorsports, so big shout out to them. They are a 4-year-old racing team based in Birmingham, Alabama, that currently races a Caterham 7420R in the HSR series and a BMW Spec E46, so a big shout out to them for help funding the Spec-5 World Tour and keeping it moving and just letting us be able to do what we love to do up here in the booth every week. So big shout out to them, as Ashley Lyle back here continues to run a quiet race in the final 10 minutes, leading this field in the open class.
The gaps around her have been pretty stable. She's just trying to bring it home now. Going to get that, hopefully get that open class victory. Don't want to give it to her yet. She still has another 10 minutes racing to go. But she's in a pretty comfortable position. Not really any pressure from anybody around her. Just got to bring home the groceries now.
Looks like we have a bit of an off-track report from Zach Burke. Looks like this is in Lesmos, I believe. Onto the brakes he comes, over the curb. And, onto the gravel a little bit. Keeps it together. Nothing lost from that. Maybe just a tad bit of momentum and a tad bit of pride there behind the wheel of that car. But he's going to maintain a P6 there for himself. And now the battle for the lead is going to start to heat up. It's between 3 cars. And we've seen what finishes 3 cars can produce here at this track. Or not at this track, but just in this series, which 2 or 3, actually, no, it might have been even 4 weeks ago at Sebring. Joshua Soto, Rui Coimbra, and Mitchell Peak, 3 wide to the line, separated by just 12 thousandths of a second. So we've seen what 3 cars can do here, and you better bet your bottom dollar that these guys are also going to do that exact same thing. Maybe not in the same spectacular fashion, but I'm going with it's going to be a wild finish and a big fight to the very end, as we still have 8 minutes remaining. Actually, no, 7 minutes remaining in this race, I do believe. Actually, no, it's 8, excuse me.
Right now, in this stage of the race, these top 3, they're all watching each other, seeing where they may be faster, seeing where they may have to defend, where they're going to attack, trying to plan out their moves, trying to strategize where they're going to make their move at the end of the race. If you're Scott Keenan third, you're going to have to make a move earlier because you have to get around 2 cars. If you're Josh Soto, you may wait to the last minute and then pounce and hopefully catch the car ahead of you sleeping. If you're Ronnie Coates, you're going to have to decide when and where you're going to defend without giving up too much speed. Maybe try to take a really slow entry into a corner to try to back them up off you, hit the gas and pull away a little bit, and try to open it up for that last run into Parabolica.
Oh, I know that. Friend I know very well. Hello, Clark. So big shout out to you for sticking around and watching the stream. Hey, Clark, one of our mutual friends is currently sitting there in P21, Ethan Stanley. So hopefully you can root for him, give him a bit of help here, as he currently sits here in P21, running just behind Paulo Coimbra, just outside of the top 20. And man, he was so fast early on, got the pole for the open class, and just the pit stops just sent his day through the ringer.
The rookie mistakes on the pit lane seem to have gotten everybody, except for McCormick, who later had an issue with Mitchell Peak that took them both out of the race.
And it looks like as the leaders head towards Parabolica, when they finish this lap, I do believe that we're going to have about maybe just under 3 laps remaining in this race. So it looks like it's going to be 3 full laps remaining in this race. And I think Joshua Soto is just having a bit of fun behind the wheel, because if I'm not mistaken, I think I just saw him set his windshield wipers off for a bit of entertainment there as they went through Parabolica that time. As here we see Greg Brockway in P28. So these guys, everybody's just trying to relax towards the end of this race. You know, you got Charles Vaccaro back here just trying to bring that 164 car home. Sean Hayes here in the 26th. Gareth Brockosby, P25, just through the field the whole time. John Casey there. Jerry DiPiero, Bruce Silva, Stanley, Coimbra, Ruiz, Lombardi, Olsen, Cossack, Mack. All of those guys, they're just trying to finish their race, get the good points that they've gotten, and just try to just bring that car home, bring it clean, and prepare for next week, which I believe, if I check my schedule to make sure I have it right, next week for this series is, apologies for being so slow. We are at Road Atlanta next week, which is always a show for these guys. So really, everybody, just final 5 minutes of this race, it's going to be calm throughout most of the field except those top 3 cars. Soto and Keene holding right onto the back bumper of Ronnie Coates. They head through Curva Grande now. Oh, wait, no, excuse me. That was Lee Martin and Jedediah Babinick we were looking at. Excuse me. The leaders currently are in Lesmos 2 at the moment. Here's David Staub, P10. Brian Zabelski in front of him. Otis Adams Jr., 5.3 seconds up the road. Eugenio Polici right in front of him. The hometown driver doing pretty good for himself. P7 in the number 7 car. Zach Burke directly in front of him. Then it's Tom Rath, 2.7 seconds up the road. Zach just seems to love the gravel on the exit of the second Lesmos. He's hit there more times than I can count every time I've seen him go through there. Rui Coimbra in front of Tom Rath. Bit of an uphill climb for that driver, but he's done a good job. Then we get back to the top 3 drivers who are currently in a grid-locked battle for the late race lead of this race. They head down the short chute towards Parabolica at the moment. And I do believe that we are going to get 2 laps to go for these guys this time by. So let's see if we can keep an eye on this until the end, because it is about to be 4.5 minutes of pure and utter chaos.
You see Scott Keane fell off the back of Soto just a little bit. You have to wonder maybe if he's scouting out a run, trying to open up a little space so that he has some room to get a good draft momentum build up to make a move on the last lap, possibly going into turn 1, so then he can set up a move for Ronnie Coates at the end of the lap. But Soto knows this too. He's not going to just let it happen, and he's also eager to get around Coates at the end of the race. Coates is going to start defending really hard here over the next lap and a half.
And you got to think, if you're in Scott Keane's position back there, the best thing to do probably from P3 is to try and just get a bit of a gap going, maybe 3 or 4 tenths like he was doing out of Parabolica, and just measuring how much the draft helps down the straight so you can know what you have to try and work towards to try and make a move using the draft on the last lap of this race, because this battle is about to really start to heat up as these guys head through the second chicane for the second to last time here tonight. And I would expect if we're going to see a move from Joshua Soto anywhere, it's probably going to be the main straight on the final lap, or actually, you know what, a better spot could be if he can maintain that gap through Lesmos on the white flag. The best spot to make a move, honestly, could it be the straightaway after Lesmos 2, which they are on right now. A lap from now could be the best spot to make a move if the gap is close enough, because you only have one more straight left after that, and if you don't get a good run through Ascari, your race is over. So if Soto could make the move here possibly and try and just block for his life going down that short chute, he could be better off through Parabolica, but we'll have to see what happens in a lap's time as they head through Ascari.
I can tell you for certain, in cars at this speed, whoever has the inside of Parabolica is almost guaranteed the win for the drag race to the start-finish line. It's a much shorter distance. You can cause your opponent to go a larger distance. They won't be as fast. You may have to give up a little bit of entry speed, but it pays off in the end. So I expect whoever's in the lead coming out of Ascari to hug that white line on the right side coming all the way down to Parabolica.
So here these guys come through Parabolica to take the white flag in this race. There's the flag man giving it to these guys as they head down the main straight for the final lap of this race. Here's Soto making the move. Scott Keane is going to follow suit. And this is going to put Ronnie Coates in P3 if Scott Keane can make the move as well. It looks like Scott is going to maintain his position in third. Soto and Coates, however, side by side into the first chicane. Soto is going to end up with the better of it. Coates falls back down to second. Scott Keane trying to go for a move now as Soto had to sacrifice his exit to try and go side by side through turn 1. Now it's going to be up to see what Coates can do to try and make that move once more to try and get back around for the lead.
Real cheeky move from Josh Soto there to not take the line all the way around the white line, but to run a little bit wide and to give Keane some draft. Oh, he's almost seen a little bit of contact there as we come into the second chicane. Ronnie Coates is going to look to the inside to move in for Lesmos 1, but he's giving Scott Keane some draft to try to help him stay alongside to hopefully make those two fight and give him a clear run to the finish.
And it looks like Ronnie Coates, he has his nose out front to the first Lesmos. We have to see what happens to the second one. Scott Keane hangs back there as they head down this short chute. Soto still has his nose in there. It looks like he backs off a little bit to try and get that draft run down this straight for the final time under the bridge for the oval section. A historic Italian venue bringing us a fantastic finish here so far. Scott Keen trying to make a move. Soto is going to back out of it. He'll have one more shot after Ascari. Through Ascari for the final time. Over the curb. Soto needs a really good corner here if he wants to have a shot. Currently, though, Coates leads these three cars through the short chute for the final time. Soto needs the run of his life. I'm not sure if he'll get it in time. He looks like he might be too far back. He'll need the best run out of Parabolica possible. He's going to be too far back, but he's still going to try and go for it. Late onto the brakes in a Parabolica. He gets the inside, and he's going to make it sick. Door-to-door contact. Soto is going to take the lead. Here comes Scott Keen through the inside. He's going to get past Ronnie Coates side by side down to the line. I believe Soto is going to have it. Ronnie Coates going for it as well, but it's going to be Joshua Soto. He'll take the flag, and this time he'll get to keep it, I guess, after Sebring. What a finish, 3 wide across the line. Second time we've seen that this season. Soto gets it done. Scott Keen P2. Ronnie Coates P3, Ashley Lyle, her first start in this series. She ends up winning it at what she thinks is one of her worst tracks. I bet it's one of her best ones now after this. There's Kenneth Staub finishing his race. We'll have to see where Andrew Kosick is back behind these guys. There's the hometown driver, Eugenio Polici, bringing it home in P14. Andrew Kosick going to be the next car to cross the line out of Parabolica. There he is, getting a nice solid P2 for himself. Ray Lombardi, P3 for the open class. There's Josh Olson crossing the line just behind him. Then Sean Ruiz, then Paulo Coimbra, then a long 21 seconds behind him is Ethan Stanley. This driver, we thought he had the pace to win this race, and he most certainly did. The pit stops ended up just not going his way. He ended up losing a bunch of time, but he's going to still end up bringing it home P6 in the open class. Nothing to be ashamed about. Great job from the 96 car, and great job from everybody in the field as the final drivers come across the line. That was what a race.
And it looked like in the last lap, we had quite a couple of drivers that lost quite a few positions. I think Jerry DiPiero and Eugenio Polici may have both had incidents in that last lap that cost them some time.
And just, that was absolutely fantastic. I don't know. I mean, we all thought Sebring was incredible. And just the 3 wide finish coming down to the line. But I think, I don't know, this might take the cake. That was just complete and utter chaos on the last lap. I think there was at least 3 lead changes through the entire last lap for the win of that race. Just absolutely incredible from all the drivers involved, and another great race from the Spec-5 World Tour.
Ronnie Coates is going to be kicking himself tonight. He should have defended that entry into Parabolica. Even though he had a gap, he had to know that gap was going to disappear by the end of the straightaway. Josh Soto took the inside line and ended up winning the race.
Yeah, and it's just, what a finish is. Here are your results. Joshua Soto finally gets his first win after being in contention for it so many times there in P1. Scott Keen and Ronnie Coates came back to the line with him 3 wide, and Scott Keen ends up getting P2, Ronnie Coates in P3. Tom Rath ends up P4. Rui Coimbra, after a bit of an uphill battle, gets P5. David Staub in P6. Otis Adams Jr. in P7, Jedediah Babinek in P8, Brian Zabelski in P9, Lee Martin in P10, Ashley Lyle, her first race at one of her self-proclaimed worst tracks. I bet it is one of her worst tracks now there in that number 32 car. Great job from her in her first race to get her first open class win. Then it's Zach Burke in P12, Kenneth Staub in P13, Eugenio Polici in P14, the home crowd driver. Did a pretty good job for himself all night, was nice and consistent in that number 7 car. Greg Mack there in P15, Andrew Kosick in P16, Ray Lombardi in P17, Josh Olson in P18. Behind them, it's Sean Ruiz in P19, Paulo Coimbra in P20, Ethan Stanley. After he started the race out really well, the pit stops proved to not go well for him there. Ends up P21, John Casey in P22, Bruce Silva P23, Jerry DiPiero in P24, Gareth Brocklesby in P25, Sean Hayes in P26, Charles Vaccaro in P27, Greg Brockway in P28, Mitchell Peak in P29, Mark McCormack in P30, Michael Coates in P31, and Tom Athan ends up P32 at the end of the day. That was just absolutely fantastic. I don't think I could have asked for anything else when we came to the track. We knew this race was going to be insane, and it surely was. But what do you say we get to some interviews? And first, we're going to take in the winner of the day. Josh, it's not the second time you've been 3 wide coming to the line, except this time you end up getting the win. How was it out there? It looked incredible.
Oh man, yeah, it was an awesome race. Had a lot of great battles. Coming down to the final lap, just really trying to get a great exit on the back straight. Didn't ended up not getting that good of an exit, and kind of had to go for a send. Sent a little bit too much, but ended up getting it done.
Yeah, you really sent it really hard in the parabolic on that last lap. That was crazy there. I didn't think you were going to be close enough. I thought you were going to have to try and just get a good run through there and end up trying to make one coming down to the line. But I mean, we know that's not the second time you've been 3 wide to the line there for the fight for a win. And it's different this time because, I mean, you end up getting the win. How special does it feel at this historic venue?
Oh man, it feels great. Like, I actually picked up the track yesterday, and I had some gear malfunctions. Like my shifter broke, so I ended up having to use paddle shifters. But yeah, I mean it all turned out to be great. There was an unfortunate event that happened in the race though with Mitchell Peak. He ended up dropping out. I mean, because of an incident, but. I mean, yeah, it was just a great race. Had fun, a lot of fun, yeah, I'm glad to be racing with these guys.
Yeah, and anybody you want to thank before we let you go here tonight?
I want to thank everybody that's involved in the series. You guys, everybody that puts it together. You guys do a great job week after week, and I'm really appreciative to be able to race with you guys.
Yeah, and I'm going to drag it back in. Congrats on the win tonight, man. You deserve it. Finally, you got one that went your way. Congrats on the win. We'll hope to see you up here again soon.
Yeah, thank you.
And next, we're going to drag in the winner of the Open class in her first start ever, I do believe. Ashley, how the hell did you do that? I thought you said Monza was one of your worst tracks.
I don't know how I did that, buddy. I got kind of lucky with some of it, though, because there were a lot of cars that did kind of go off, throughout the course of the event. And at the start, I don't know if it was just the predominantly oval experience with the drafting kicked in or what, or if I just kind of got lucky with some of the gaps. But I got a few good runs at the start and just ended up taking them and was able to clear through a lot of the traffic before everyone got too far broken apart. And at that point, it's just kind of riding along until the pit stops, which I completely screwed up, or else I would have been in the top 10. I'm a little annoyed about that, to be truthful. Should have been a top 10, but I overfueled significantly.
Yeah, and you weren't the only rookie in the field to be affected by pit stops. We know that there were other drivers in the field that were affected by that too, but you ended up overcoming that. And I mean, we saw you racing with some of the more experienced pro class drivers there, just really when you didn't even need to there early on in the race before the pit stops. How was that racing with these guys?
I was actually in a call with another driver in here, Paul, and him and I were chatting during that as well. And I'll save some of the language for the broadcast. I don't know how swearing is with this, but I was just saying, like, this is completely fascinating to me. Like, these guys are mental, man. I'm used to the official series in iRacing, which are a complete dumpster fire where you'll have, like, 2 or 3 good cars and everyone else is basically trying to figure out how to tie their shoes properly while they're in the car, But here it's just, there are people going 3 wide into the chicane. And I was doing that to try to fake people out. I didn't know they'd actually try to keep it going. It was crazy. I loved it.
Oh, trust me, a race like this is just mundane for this series. These guys always put on great shows. But anybody you want to thank before we let you go tonight?
Yeah, I want to thank Greg for letting me into the league in the first place. Thank you guys for putting on a good broadcast. I mean, sincerely, this is my favorite broadcast on the platform. I'm not just saying that because y'all are my friends and I was one of the first people involved with this. You guys do a fantastic job every single week with this. It's how I ended up in this league. And as usual, I want to thank my mom because she's cool.
Nice. But we're going to let you go here tonight. Congrats on the win, Ashley. We'll hope to see you up here once again in the future.
Oh, don't count on it. This was luck, but I would like to see you again. That'd be pretty fun.
All right. Well, we'll see you later. Have a good night.
You as well, buddy.
And that was Ashley Lyle, the winner of the open class here tonight. And just absolutely fantastic race from these guys here tonight, Randall.
Yeah, we saw a lot of winners. A lot of people moved up a lot of positions in the field. We have people that moved up 10, 12, 13 spots throughout the field, and we had a lot of heartache, too, from some of the pro drivers. It's very black and white race. Either you're going to do really well here or it's going to end in heartache. Josh Soto finally gets a win, another 3-wide finish. You can't script this kind of stuff.
You really can't here. I mean, Soto, first 3-wide finish of the season at Sebring, just 1,000th away from victory there when he was side by side with Rui Coimbra and Mitchell Peak. Finished P2 there, but ends up getting the win here. And absolutely fantastic race from everybody involved. It's always a fantastic race with these guys. But before we round off the stream, we have some upcoming broadcasts for you guys. The next one for you guys is going to be at 8:10 p.m. EST this Sunday. The XSLR returns with the Legacy 2008 Chevy Silverado NASCAR trucks at the Legacy Phoenix Oval. It's going to be the first asphalt oval you guys will see on the channel, so definitely looking forward to that. Next Monday as well at 9 p.m. EST, XTC returns for the GT3 and GT4 cars at Circuit Park Zandvoort. Then next Tuesday at 9:05 p.m. EST, AMS returns with the Mustang FR500Ss at the Indianapolis Road Course with the new layout I believe that they're using, so that's definitely going to be very interesting. And next Thursday, Spec-5 returns once again at 9:15 p.m. EST for these Mazda MX-5s at Road Atlanta. But that's going to do it for us. My name is Alex Andersen. I have been joined up in the commentary booth by Randall McGrew with Adam Thompson in our virtual production truck. Thank you to all who showed up, and have a good night.